Hey, it's Dominique.
And Keely.
And you are listening to Booktrospective. This week we are going to be discussing Spare by Prince Harry. So we actually are recording this at the same time as another episode, so I'm not going to ask Keely how her week was. But before, we're actually going to kind of talk about something else before. So are you a royalist, a monarchist? Are you a Prince and Harry girl? Do you know nothing about them? Where do you stand?
I stand on the I know nothing about them. I make a point to stay away from just like any kind of tabloids and drama, and then, you know, in the meanwhile, know nothing about anything going on. So
okay. And I'm on the other end. So if you're listening and you know me personally, you know the two things I love are true crime and celebrities. If I did not have to truly like work for a living, I would do like paparazzi. But so I am definitely a Prince Harry and Meghan supporter. I remember when they got married, I got up at 5 a.m. and I watched the whole thing. I had my son like a couple months before that, so I was on maternity leave. So I got up that Saturday, I watched the whole thing. I really I love everything about the royal family. Like, it's fascinating to me. Of course, I watched The Crown. I know it's not like accurate, whatever, but I love that. I do not like Prince Charles, if you are listening. I, of course, hate the whole thing with Princess Diana, and I do really hate how Prince Harry has been isolated and alienated from his. I don't particularly like Prince William, but I also think it is a like conditioning of the monarchy, of the institution as they call it, and I really would like to see like where it goes. I mean, I feel like we can give our opinion as Americans. We don't live over there, you know, whatever. But yeah, I just, you know, when they got married, everyone's like, obviously there's racial issues over there. So everyone's thinking like this is going to be good for them. And I don't know who was on their PR team, but obviously they weren't thinking, because why did you not use that? I mean, not that it's okay to use Meghan, but like that would have been like the ticket. And they just seem to have really gone the other direction with that.
Yeah,
and that's
definitely dropped the ball.
Yeah. And I just, you know, like I believe 90% of the things that I hear from their side. Now, the one thing I don't always agree with, you know, Meghan swears up and down she knew nothing about Prince Harry, which I don't know. Like, I mean, you don't know, but she's also kind of a celebrity. I just feel like it's hard to be like, I didn't know who they were. But I don't think going in that she knew anything about it. I mean, even like from what we see from Princess Diana, she truly didn't even know. And she was kind of born and bred for that possibility. Right. And so I do really hate that. I also like, you know, they want privacy, and like the world's like, oh, they publish on Netflix, but they wanted privacy. Like, that's not the same thing. Like, they recognize that they are celebrities and they recognize that they give us stuff, but like that doesn't mean that you should be chasing them off the road or like chasing their children or things like that. Like things that happen to like, you know, regular celebrities over here too. There should be like a line for that. And I hate it. And she can't win. Like, it doesn't matter like what, I mean, even with like the coronation that just happened and stuff, like she didn't go because that, and like that was an issue. But if she would have gone, like it would have been an issue. Right. So it's kind of a moot point. So I was very excited to read this. So I guess if you could summarize your thoughts into like one word or one sentence about Spare, what would you say about it?
It's definitely eye-opening.
Yes. I would say, I'm going to say provoking. I think that's my word. So if you have not read it, just in general summary, Prince Harry writes this, you know, from his perspective. It is, I listened to the audiobook. It is in his voice, which I think I like that for audiobooks when they are the one narrating it. It essentially actually starts out post Prince Philip's funeral. Is where it starts, and then he kind of jumps back to when his mom died, and it kind of goes from there. He talks a lot about his childhood post his mom's death, his experience at school. He goes a lot into his military background, and then we basically kind of end up into where we are now with, you know, him marrying Meghan, what led them to lead the royal family, and kind of like their thoughts on how things are going. So that's kind of like a general overview. This episode will contain spoilers, so if you want to listen to it and come back, you are more than welcome to do so. If not, then we are kind of just gonna get into it. So I am much more prepared So we start in the prologue. It's basically Harry is waiting to meet with his dad, Charles, and his brother, William, to discuss his departure from the royal family. The hard part for me is that, like, I have been involved in this, so, like, I get stories crossed. But, you know, essentially, Harry seems blindsided throughout this whole thing. Yeah. You know, these are his parents and his siblings. And the thing about the institution, it seems, is like they are taught to be detached. And the crown, the institution, comes before everything else. And Harry is also, as the book says, he's the spare. And so if you don't know, that's what they don't want a ton of kids when they're having kids over there, even though some of them did, like Queen Victoria. You know, all they need is two. They need an heir, which was Prince William, and a spare, which is Prince Harry. As we know, Prince Charles and Diana did not have a great relationship, so once her job was done, that was pretty much it for them. That's why there are no other children. But Harry's basically meeting with his dad and his brother post his grandfather's funeral, and like, hey, we want to step back. It was never their intention to completely leave the royal family, but they basically were like pushed into that narrative, it seems. That's the prologue. The first 5 chapters, he kind of talks about Balmoral Castle, which is where Queen Elizabeth died. It's in Scotland, I believe. He really just talks about being called the spare, and this is also where he was when his dad came and told him that his mom died. Do you have any thoughts about how that kind of went down, or?
I think that, along with kind of what you said, he seemed to be blindsided a lot. It seems like everybody outside of, Prince Harry lacked the understanding or the want to understand. And it hindered the communication, I believe, on both sides.
Yeah, so it's known, this is a known thing, that basically, obviously, you guys have seen probably what happens when somebody dies in their family. It's a big to-do. When Queen Elizabeth died, it was 2 weeks. They try not to show emotion. And when his mom died, he grabbed his dad's hand or his brother's hand, and that was emotional. And so that's a big talk point and a no-no. And so that kind of started everything down the path, it seems like, for him. But essentially, when his mom dies, his dad comes in, wakes him up, and he calls him darling boy, telling him, I don't think he gives him all the details, but he tells him his mom died. And Harry, for many, many, many years, we learned, just truly believed that his mom was hiding. Harry was 12, which I don't feel like is super, I feel like as he talked about it, it seemed like he was even younger. Yeah. 12 isn't super young, but obviously it is your child. Mm-hmm. William is 15. This is my own personal opinion that I'm throwing in here. From what I have seen of this, it seems like, Harry was still young enough to love his mom and his dad, really, right, and had no negative thoughts. From William's point of view, it seems like Diana leaned on her children a lot because that's really all she had, and I almost feel like William resents her for it. That really was a big splitting time for them. And I don't think, it seems like Harry just really didn't get the support that he needed during that time. So he kind of goes into that. And then he talked about school. So if in that time they sent all their kids off to school, mm-hmm, there was lots of boarding schools and things like that. He talks about different teachers. Some of them would give him a pass, some of them wouldn't. It really was kind of a toss-up. And if you know anything about Prince Harry, he was always and he talks about this later, he was always shown as the bad boy, the bad student. Mm-hmm. And he's it really wasn't that at all. So he kind of talks about that a little bit, and he starts to talk about Camilla, which, again, if you know anything, you know who Camilla is. Not a fan. But he did not, what did they say? They didn't want them to get married, but then they were they didn't want their dad to be alone. Right. So it's a really hard situation to be in. Not only just okay, obviously this lady was with my dad when my mom was alive, they were married. Now my mom's dead. Also, my dad's the Prince of England. He's going to be the king. There's all these rules, but they really, Harry and William wanted Charles to be happy. And so they supported it, even though it's not necessarily what they wanted, but they, the big thing for them was that their dad was happy. So that's kind of how that marriage became. But he also just kind of talks about his dad in general. You know, his dad tried to bond, but if you've ever seen Prince Charles, that man does not, like, he is the most socially awkward person on the face of the earth. His dad took him to, like, a Spice Girls concert, and he talks about that being a memorable moment as well. But pretty much after his, like, boyhood was gone, the media really started to exploit Harry, and that's where we get that, like, bad boy image, not good at school, he's a druggie, and he says it really started off like he broke his thumb playing, what did they play, rugby?
Yeah.
And the media made it out to be like, oh, the prince is injured, like, they wouldn't release details,
Yeah.
and it's just like they used him as a bargaining chip, like, whenever they needed some kind of media attention, whether it was good or bad.
And what I thought about the phrase that came to mind is no press is bad press kind of
Yes.
thing. Like, they take anything that they can get.
Yeah, they are like there are lots of, there are lots of managers, I think, or at least used to be, that thought that way, and to them, like, there is no bad press. They're talking about you, that's good. So then he kind of talks about, like, just the differences between him and his dad. What was it? Something about, like, reading and letters. Just, they don't communicate well.
Yeah.
Again, Charles is a socially awkward person, you know? Actually, and I don't even know if I can say that, because obviously him and Camilla have a great relationship. He just did not know how to connect with his children, but I think he got that from his mother. I mean, it is noted that Queen Elizabeth, they're not like touchy-feely kids, which is why Diana, when she was around, you know, she wanted her kids to go on their tours, like, things like that. And she's like, I want my kids there. And it was, like, frowned upon, which again is just kind of like the thought process that they have over there. And it's extremely weird. I don't know, like, what, like, I guess it's looked at as a weakness, maybe. Obviously, you know, if it's 1600s, they go to war, but it's a different time now. And I'm not really sure why they won't let that go. The other thing he kind of starts to talk about is, like, distancing himself, like, royals in the public. And I think it's a fine line from the outside looking in that they're trying to maintain, which is why everyone's, like, waiting on the downfall of the royal monarchy, because they are really just figureheads. They don't actually do anything. They go and, like, do speaking engagements, and it's more like a morale thing. Yeah. But there is that fine line of, like, you have to give them something. And it's like they're missing that. I don't know. And Harry, like, starts to notice that as well. So then he talks about this time he goes out and kills a deer, and it was a traumatic experience. This guy takes him out, they go hunting, which is a big thing over there. Okay, so they kill the deer, but then the guy, like, puts Harry's face, cuts the deer open and, like, smothers him inside this deer. I'm like, what is going on here? So it's really, he said it really connected him almost to, like, colonization. And I think that's, again, a very big viewpoint, because looking at now who Harry's married to, where he's living, and looking back on, like, the British monarchy, that's also an argument I feel like people have all the time, like, okay, no, Queen Elizabeth isn't the one who, like, went and stole all these jewels, but, like, you guys still wear people's jewels on your head, and you stole them from other countries. So it's like, when are they going to, like, do the right thing? And so even at, like, a young age, it seems like Harry was really starting to recognize that. And so then he talks about 9/11, and even Queen Elizabeth kind of had a very different reaction to that. When 9/11 happened, she lowered the flag to, like, half mast or 3/4 mast, whatever it is. And obviously for England and Britain to recognize an American tragedy when we are, like, their nemesis are supposed to be, was, like, a big thing to him. And just really recognizing, it seems like some of the change of the times is starting to occur. And I like to see that. I have, like, a hard time with Queen Elizabeth, because I, like, at face value, like, when I think about her, I'm like, oh, I like her. But then I also think, like, what she represents, and I'm like, I don't like that. So I have a hard time, like, with it, but I do respect that a lot. And notably, he was her favorite grandchild. That's what everyone says. They had a very wonderful relationship, it seems. And so he kind of reflects on that part as well. But, unfortunately, Harry discovers that Camilla, the evil queen that she is, basically was using a spin doctor. So we kind of get back into this media thing. That was kind of the time where, like, people were basically drawing attention to the fact that, like, Charles is marrying, he's a cheater. and Camilla was like, we're going to get a spin doctor and spin that. But Harry realizes that he was basically the casualty of that, and his dad didn't care. Like, anything to save face for Camilla and Charles was used, and he, again, was that. So that's when they really started spinning the drugs and all of these things for Harry, and he really suffered from that. Another thing, which I don't have it in my notes and it might be out of order, that Harry talks about is his and William's relationship. Mm-hmm. So William, again, was 3 years older. He's already gone off to the boarding school. And Harry is thinking like, okay, when I get there, like, I got my brother. No. William almost like hazed him.
Yeah.
Which, like, what's your thought on that?
Partially, I get it. Being, an older sibling, want my own space, my own life, my own, like, don't hang on to me, but at the same time, gotta stick up for your sibling, and, like, that was, like, no.
William literally said, like, don't speak to me, you don't know me. And Harry was really hurt. I mean, because up and really till the point that their mom died, they had a very, very close relationship. And it was almost, it's really like, he just lost everything. He didn't lose his dad initially or his grandparents, but his mom was gone, and his brother immediately, like, distanced himself. He really talks about just that occurrence and feeling alone when he was away at school, because William, he just knew he was going to get there, and William was going to be his confidant, the person he could depend on, and he didn't really have that. And he also kind of talks about just, like, the lack of physical contact in the family, like, they don't really hug or show emotions, and just in general how fast they move on from death. Between his mom's death and now he's lost his great-grandmother, his aunt, great aunt, so Queen Elizabeth's sister had died, and I'm sure there's other family members that weren't, as famous or whatever you want to call that. And really he's like, business just goes on as usual over there. There's never, like, a moment, even though, like, when Queen Elizabeth died, they took 2 weeks to mourn her. I don't know if you would even call it that, but it's all like a show. Yeah. It's just a show all the time. And that's
don't have that real time to grieve.
Yes. That's kind of what he's been struggling with. Again, this also is a time where he's still believing, like, his mom's going to show up at some time and be like, hey, I was just hiding, which, again, therapy is very important, and he gets to that later. He's, like, thinking that his mom is going to come back. This is, again, when he starts to, like, I don't think that Harry was a druggie. Did you feel like he was? No. I feel like he was kind of a normal teenager. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you know, this is such a stereotype, I'm sorry, but if you know, even like rich kids, like, okay, if you watch Euphoria and they're like there's kids doing drugs, and although it's not ideal, I don't find that to be, like, unusual. I feel like that happens. But again, the media took that and were like, oh, he's using drugs. He's, doing all these things.
Everything was set to the extreme.
Yes.
So every little detail was then turned to be, something huge.
Absolutely. And then Harry also, he's like, I don't really want to go to, like, college. Like, he's like, he's not a scholar. And he's like, I understand that. And so then it's like, again, this whole, like, not Harry's dumb, but, like, oh, he's a poor student and, like, all of these things. And it's just not that. Like, that's just not what he wanted to do. Harry starts to date a little bit. He notably dated a girl named Chelsea for a while. And it's really because, like, on the outside, he had this persona going on that he didn't feel like fighting, essentially. Right. He has, like, a small circle, and he goes to Africa, and that's where Chelsea's South African, I believe. That's kind of when he really starts to get in touch with Harry. If you've watched, like, the Harry and Meghan documentary, like, he's really big into nature and things, and I feel like this is kind of where he really got into that. He stays with a couple that really just, like, show him the lay of the land, and he really starts to get in tune with that, and that's when he meets Chelsea. He dated for a while, but unfortunately she just wasn't, like, up to the standards of the royal family, and so that relationship did not become, endgame. Also during this time, he talks about his time in the army, which I will say, he talked about this entirely too much for my liking. I was like, okay, Harry, I got it. I mean, he talks about, he basically, he went twice, and it was a big deal for him to go because obviously it's like a military, like, scare. I mean, if they're at war, and they were going to war during this time, and they know that you guys have Prince Harry or Prince William or somebody on base, like, obviously that's a target. Right. So I mean, I understand his frustration, but again, you were born into this role, and there's not a lot of people can. And I honestly, like, I don't know if I would want to be at the camp that has Prince Harry, because I'm like, I don't want to be the target. Like, I'm like, you need to go somewhere else, because I don't want that. I don't want them coming for us. So that was like something that he mapped drones.
Yeah.
That was like his big thing, which he could do like kind of isolated, but the downfall to him going to the military was the media. Again, they leaked it, which I'm like, do you guys not think that that's like a national emergency issue? Like, you're going to jail. Like, whoever posted this article, like, I'm like, are they in jail? Because that, even like you can't even do that for big people. You can't like be posting where people are. Like, they're at war, and they did that to Prince Harry, so he did not get to spend as much time as he wanted to. But I do think, like, at least from like my perspective, it really gave him like his first real meaning. It seems like, you know, he really is athletic. If you've never seen the video of him and Prince William, of like Prince William trying to do that obstacle course. And then Harry, I don't even know if it's the same thing. There's a video that was like combined. One of them, sorry, there's a motorcycle. Okay, so there's videos out there, like, they're like combined videos. One of them is Prince William, which he's so dorky. Like, he has this helmet on, and he's trying to do this obstacle course, and he's like floundering. And then Prince Harry was on, when, what's his name, still had a show, James something. Oh, I can't think. It was like a late night show. But anyways, he's like climbing up the ropes. Like, he is fit. He is fit and ready to go. And so, like, the military was definitely the place. He's very athletic. He loves sports. All of those things are very important to him. And so I feel like the army and the military was the first time he really felt like he belonged somewhere and that he had a purpose. He does also kind of talk about, oh, and look, I literally put in my notes, no purpose. He does also, during this time, talk about, like, William and Kate's budding relationship. So it's very known that they were, like, the three amigos for good and bad reasons. For example, when Harry wears the Nazi outfit. God, that was a poor choice. They, like, told him to do it. Like, Will and Kate were, like, they were going to a Halloween. He's like, I don't even go to dinner parties. He's like, I don't go to dinner parties. They're like, we're going to this dinner party, and you have to wear costumes. And they all three agreed that he should wear a Nazi costume. Like, oh, in poor taste. He has apologized immensely for this, but God, Harry, I need you to take a little more accountability in that. You were an adult. Notably, they do come from Germans. The Windsors are German descent. So it's not excusing it. I don't know. But they were like the three amigos. They were very close, which comes back into the picture when Meghan gets introduced. But he does talk about like feeling like a third wheel. At a point in time, he had like extreme anxiety. He almost like was becoming more of like a hermit. Like he never went outside. He also talks about, before he meets Meghan, he talks about feeling thrown away by his family, which I would agree, because you're thinking, like, this is Prince Harry. He's living somewhere nice. He's like, when we would go to Balmoral Castle for Christmas or wherever they go, he's like, I had to stay in the, like, room by the kitchen or whatever, which he's like all of their cousins are there. There's a lot of them, but he's just like, he didn't have a nice place. Or even where he was living, he was like, I lived in this downstairs basement apartment. My neighbor would cut his hair and throw it out the window, and it would come back in my window. So you're like, yeah, it wasn't that great. So he like, basically he had poor living quarters, and he really did just feel like the spare. Like he wasn't needed. And maybe that's why his grandmother had like such a like connection with him, or felt bad. But he does kind of talk about that. And so after leaving the military, he's looking for a purpose in life. He does the Invictus Games, which him and Meghan still do, which is kind of like a special, was it like a Special Olympics? Something like that. It's kind of, but like for like military vets. Yeah. And so like he really like got passionate into that. I mean, I feel like, I honestly kind of feel like it now too. Like he's always kind of looking for his purpose. I feel like he has more of a purpose now, but it seems like, I mean, it really just seems like Harry was just thrown out there, and it was like, he was just in the water by him. William has a purpose. He's going to be the king. His dad has a purpose. He's going to be the king. You're literally just a spare. We'll come and get you when we need you. And so he really said that he really starts to find himself again with Meghan. If you're not familiar with their love story, essentially, Meghan is doing Suits at this time. She's in Canada, divorced. She was planning to just do a girl summer. She was not dating. Harry, scrolling through Instagram, as we do, sees her picture on his friend's Instagram maybe, and was like, who is this lady? Now, I want to know why they call this man Has. I hate it. I do hate that. Harry is a nickname already. Why are we calling him that? But they call him Has. So they tell Meghan, like, this is who it is. She agrees to go on a date with him. Really spur of the moment. He's late. He is like running through traffic. Well, no, he's stuck in traffic. She doesn't understand, this was confusing to me. But she doesn't understand why he can't just get out and like walk down the street, right? Like, because it's Prince Harry, he can't. But and he's like, I don't want to be like, because I have my security detail. But he comes in all flustered, and she like will look back and say like, normally I would have got up and left. Like, she's not standing for that. But it's love at first sight almost for them. They start dating. Obviously, she's underprepared for what this relationship is going to bring. They kept it to themselves for a while. Obviously, they knew at some point in time it was going to become known. I think their last like private moment, they went to a Halloween party with his cousin Beatrice. Is it Beatrice? Is that the one? Or is it Eugenie? Oh, which one is it? I want to say it's Eugenie, actually. It's one of those two. And they go to like a Halloween party, and that was really like their last free time. And then like news broke. Meghan was like 1000% underprepared for the amount of like paparazzi. I don't know why. Again, this part is what I don't get. I'm like, it's Prince Harry. Like, to me, I'm like, I literally remember when Prince William was like, they were talking about him getting married, and they had like what were those magazines? They're not People. It was like the Teen. I don't know. And it had like 50 like eligible women, like Cameron Diaz at the time, like all stuff like that. And then after he got with Kate, who's gonna marry Prince Harry? Like, they were even talking about Rihanna at one point. How did you not know like what this was gonna be? Right. I mean, so that's the only thing. I'm like, I understand being underestimating it, but like, you have to have some like inkling, like, this is Prince Harry. I don't know. But it blows up. And then so he starts introducing her to family. He introduces her to Will and Kate, and obviously Meghan goes in like and hugs them because she's like, in her mind, she's like, I understand that you're Prince so-and-so, but like, you're also just Harry's brother. Right. So like, I would think like, okay, at home, they kick off their shoes, and she was so surprised as to, what Harry's been saying this whole book is like, no, it doesn't change indoors. We are the same people indoors and outdoors. It's like unbeknownst, like, does Will not like her just from that very instant where it's kind of like, she didn't respect me and my title. Then it's the whole curtsy thing. She's like, I've never curtsied. They're literally in the car on the way to meet Queen Elizabeth. Again, she's like, okay, I'm just meeting your grandma because I understand that she's Queen Elizabeth, but like, this is your grandma. Right. He's like, no, you have to curtsy. Harry, you failed. You have to prepare her better. Right. And he says that. He knows that he underestimated what it was going to be. Recent news also has come out in the time frame with this book is that when they got engaged, the lady who was supposed to like acclimate Meghan to this just got like ousted from the whole royal family for doing something racist. She was set up to fail. So he really just like talks about, like the family meeting her, the wedding, and then it was already like rumblings of a lot of racial issues, but it just really like ran wild. And his thing is it's not even what they were saying. It's just the fact that the institution allowed them to say it. His biggest argument is, I want to say something. He says, they're always like, we don't say, what does he say? There's a phrase that he says, and I can't think. He's like, no stress, no. Oh, I can't think of what it is. If I can think of it, I'm going to put it in the notes. We don't say anything. Like, but that's not true because we know that they feed the media. Right. If you don't know how it works in the royal family media, they literally have offices at, what's the place called? Buckingham. I'm like, Birmingham. Buckingham Palace. They literally have offices. They have approved royal media. So like, you do feed them. So it's like, when there's negative articles, Harry's like, why can't we say anything? And they're like, we just don't. I mean, they're literally, that's when, Harry or Meghan gets pregnant. They're like speculating the color of her child and putting like monkeys in it's atrocious. And again, I say to Buckingham PR, what is wrong with you? Are there going to be people that would be mad if you defend them? Yes. But I'm telling you that that portion was a lot smaller. You just allowed it. And that's, you know, that's what it is. And so we get into the fact that they have their baby. They have Archie. Meghan also is unprepared for the fact that you want me to get dressed in all white and go down and stand and take a picture of my newborn, and I'm literally bleeding from my inside out. Like I just pushed a baby out of me. And they expect that. She goes into a postpartum depression. Meghan honestly got so bad. This was when she was still pregnant. I mean, she was suicidal. She just, I mean, and it's sad because you find out that she's suicidal, and then you look at the articles and they're like, oh, Meghan's always touching her stomach.
Yeah.
Like, she's a pregnant woman. I mean, where else am I supposed to put my hands? I put my food on my belly. Like, and literally that, like, there's that night when they go to something, Meghan's wearing this blue dress, I remember it. And literally before that, like, she was just like bawling in tears, and she was suicidal. I mean, can you imagine, like, you have like this whole like country is talking about you, and your family is not standing up for you. Right. Also, we know that Meghan had to deal with the issues with her dad and him, like, and her like half sister, you know, all that drama. And again, like, Harry's whole thing this entire time is like, it wouldn't even have mattered what people were saying if his family would have supported him. So, you know, it's to the point that he has to stand up for his family. So he starts to have this conversation with his dad that he wants to step down. They don't want to leave altogether. You know, at that point, they're staying in Canada, I believe. This is like right before the pandemic broke out. And his dad's like, oh, you need to put it in writing. So he sends it and it gets leaked. And he's like, okay, so that's why I don't want to put it in writing, because I can't get to it. So then, you know, they have this back and forth about stepping down, and all of a sudden the royal family posts that he's leaving with his signature on it, and he's like, I did not say this. And so they basically made that decision for them. He also talks about trying to talk to his grandmother, and they literally would not let him.
Blocked him.
Yeah. He's like, I'm coming to town, you know. She's like, yeah, sure. And then she's like, oh, like, they basically packed her schedule, so he couldn't meet with her. And I'm just like, can you imagine not being able to go talk to your grandma, like, or your dad? Like, I gotta set up a meeting to meet with my grandma, and like the institution won't let me do that. That's kind of like the overall gist of the book. I mean, a lot of the stuff I already knew. You went into it, so I'm just like curious as to like what your thoughts are, because I feel like it was just like, oh, okay, I knew that for me. But what were you like kind of thinking?
Yeah. So I went in completely blind. Like, I knew details here and there about, you know, stuff that happened, stuff that was going on, but overall, like, had no idea.
Yeah.
So when I, you know, was listening to the audiobook, I was surprised, and honestly extremely sad for Prince Harry and Meghan too. Just seeing everything that they had to deal with, and that, you know, Prince Harry was a fall guy pretty much his whole life. Yeah.
That's basically like they've used him as the spare his whole life. And I know that's such a hard, I mean, that's his family, and he's, you know, he loves them. I mean, it's like, it's even like the freaking coronation. I mean, Prince Charles held his coronation on his son's birthday. And it's like, you know, that day, I mean, May is a big month, I feel like, for royals. That's when they got married. I feel like that's also around, like, I don't remember when William and Kate got married. It's a big month, and it's like, pick another day. Right. So, I mean, when they had that, they're like, oh, Meghan's not coming to the coronation. One, because you don't like her. Two, it is her son's birthday. So Harry literally, like, if you look at the pictures, he goes to the coronation. They don't even let him wear his freaking stuff. I mean, when his grandma died, they didn't let him wear his military stuff, which, again, he was actually in the military, like, actually doing that, but, you know, whatever. But he goes, and he's literally in his full tux at the airport, flying back. Luckily, they're hours ahead, so by the time he gets back to California, he still has a little bit of time to be with his son. And it's like, you guys keep making him choose between you, and it's wrong, you know. And then they're like talking about his titles. I'm like, well, he's Prince Harry. I mean, that's who he is. He is that. I don't really know how it works, you know. I feel like, so if history repeats itself, the whole reason that Harry's line is even the royal line is because the Queen Elizabeth's dad was actually a spare, and his brother abdicated because he married a divorced American actress, which is so funny. But he abdicated. I don't know if they consider this. Well, it's not an abdication because he wasn't first in line, so that's a little bit different for Harry. But I wonder like how that works. Like if something were to happen and he suddenly became first in line, I don't think he would want it. I don't know. It's just weird. But history, it's like they won't resolve these problems. And history is like, okay, so we're just going to keep coming back until you...
Give me another chance.
Yeah, we're just going to keep coming back and trying to get you to fix it. And it just doesn't seem like they do. So I agree. It's like, it's incredibly heartbreaking. If you haven't watched the Netflix series with them, it's also very sad. They show... there was a conversation between him and Will... I want to say about the color issue of like the baby. I want to say that's what that was. I don't know, but it's just very hard for him, and I do feel for him. I mean, I feel for Meghan too, but definitely him. I mean, this is his family, and he can't even be with his family because they won't accept or protect him. The same thing with the security. That was the other thing, you know, because Charles is king, his children are 6 or whatever, they're like close enough in line they qualify for security, but at the time when they were born they didn't. Okay, but you see the way that they're being paparazzi'd, they need security. I mean, even what was that, a couple months ago they chased them through traffic, and that incident in New York scared me so bad because I'm like, his mom literally died during a paparazzi chase, and for you to not care that much and chase them for like 2 hours. And they show that in the Netflix documentary. There's times when people follow them, and he gets so anxious and I'm just like, this man has never known a moment's peace. Like after his mom has died, he has not. Like it's really sickening, and so I really hate that for him. So how would you rate?
Honestly, I rate it 5 stars. 1, because you know it is his story, so it's like, you know, rating it, you know, too low. I feel like
you're like, oh, your life sucks.
Right. No, but I did rate it 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. You know, like I said, I had no, you know, idea about what was going on or anything. Like, it's not something that I would have just picked up
to read. Yeah.
But it was a good read. Very informative. And yeah, I honestly think that, you know, like you said, he was born, you know, for this and everything, but I feel like he was born in the wrong family.
Yeah. Because,
you know, we see him yearning for that familial connection, and it's not there.
Yeah. Yeah. It does seem, you know, he's made his own family. And I'm glad that he has, because it does seem like he has that, but I mean, it never replaces your dad and your mom. Well, his mom's not here. It doesn't replace his dad. It doesn't replace, his brother. Even Kate, I mean, like I said, they were so close, and he thought like, okay, I'm gonna bring Meghan, like we're gonna be like the four amigos. And no, it was not that at all. And you know, the media there, like they pit Kate and Meghan against each other so much. And we don't know how much of that is spun from them themselves, and it's unfortunate. I think I would give it a 4.5. There was some parts I felt like were like drawn out. The military stuff was extremely long for me. So I was like, I get it. It went on. It was like a whole section because this book is broken down into parts. It was lengthy, but otherwise, I mean, again, I told you from the beginning, I am definitely a supporter of them. I was excited to hear it. I pre-ordered this one when it came out. And I don't know. I don't know if there's a resolution for them. He just wanted to tell his story. I am also a big fan of telling your side. I always was like, I just want to say my part. But so I'm glad that they did, and I just wish them all the best. So I'm sure someday Meghan will probably have her own biography. I will definitely read it. So that is the end of this review. We have 2 more books for sure. So our next 2 books, I'm not sure what order they'll be in. We have Final Girls by Riley Sager.
And Beast of Extraordinary Circumstance by Ruth Emmy Lang.
So, Beast of Extraordinary Circumstance is more of a fantasy book, and then Final Girls is a thriller kind of horror book. It was recommended to me by Keely, and I loved it. So we'll be doing those episodes soon. Again, we will like post so you guys kind of know ahead of time what we're going to be reading if you want to read along. And then definitely follow our Instagram, which is Booktrospective. We will be working on our TikTok, so that's also Booktrospective, and we'll have that up so you can follow along there. But that is everything, and thank you guys for listening.
Bye.
Bye.